Hello again, welcome back everyone. LiquorHound here with you, and thank you for joining me once again for another spirit review video. And today we're going to be taking a look at the Kirkland Speyside single malt Scotch whiskey that is 23 years old. So, found in Costco's, not in Texas because our Costco's aren't allowed to carry their spirits, but in most Costco's around this country you should be able to find, again, Kirkland brand spirits, okay? So that's what we have here. Yeah, again, all this tells us, it doesn't really tell us much on the back. Just, again, pretty much the same information it's got on the front, which is sherry cask finish coming from Speyside. Okay, it is bottled at 92 proof. It's coming through to them from Alexander Murray and Company. So that's a famous independent bottler. They used to do a lot of stuff with Total Wine. Let's see. All right. Kirkland 23, retail pricing on it, roughly around $85. I say roughly because certain parts of the country, it seems like their specs are, I don't know, getting crazy, because I've seen some as high as $125, I think. So, but for the most part, you should be able to find this at $85. Wanted to give it a quick little review, and maybe for my Patreon members, I'll throw out the 22-year-old at the very end, but we'll see. Anyway, all right, Kirkland, 23 years old. No distillery given. All we know is it's Speyside. Okay? I'll go ahead and give it a little nosing and tasting, and maybe I'll throw a guess at what this is. Oof, wow. It starts as so malty. So malty. It almost reminds me of a really nice breakfast malt, but this one's too heavy. It's got a lot of depth. There's a lot of fruits kicking. There's even a little hint of peat smoke. It's almost meaty. Oh, that's what it is. There's like a port characteristic. And there's a meatiness. So, I don't know, sometimes I think of those two things and I kind of get a little Korean barbecue essence, and that's kind of what I'm getting here. But wow, lots of fresh strawberries, raspberries, little hint of brandied cherries in it. Lots of chocolate. There's also a little granola underneath it all. There's a little granola going on. Yeah, granola, maybe a little millet, like a little old like grain type characteristic. Again, that's not in here. That's just when I kind of pick up the nosing aspect, what it reminds me of. Cinnamon's in here, baking spices, almost like more like, it's almost feeling a little Christmassy on me. Wow. Yeah, it's raspberry right there, because it's almost like a chocolate covered raspberry. But it's not just singular, because again, there's the brandy cherry component. There's a little bit of a citrus element as well. I'm thinking more like a lemon and lemon oil. A little bit of a star anise, a little clove. Again, those baking spices, and they're all blended really nicely together. Searching on the exterior of the glass here on the edge. Sometimes you'll find some unique notes out there. Wow. So much raspberry. Maybe a little hint of that strawberry in there. Nice. Almost feels like freeze-dried strawberries. Let me get a little closer in the glass. Yeah, then you just start getting into this chocolatey. That meatiness of the smoke is very light. It's not super dominant. Not like a Mortlock where they're really heavy. This one's really focused on the fruit, the barley, the malt, and this kind of like a, I don't know, kind of like a biscotti, an almond characteristic to it, and almost a, well, I don't want to say that, I want to go there. There's almost a sourness to the fruits. And it's in the background. It's with the chocolate. But I really, really like it. And I think it's having to do with that kind of peat smoke. There's something, I think it's going to something's happening with the peat smoke on the nose, and it's hard to tell because it's not super dominant, like I said, on the nose. But let's taste it and see if we can figure that out. Wow. Come on, $85. And it's driving. That's such a great proof for this whiskey. Man, it's diving. It's starting, you know, it's like it enters, it feels soft, it feels fruity. And then all of a sudden, when you think the spice should be ramping up and we're heading into the finish, no, it's still going, it's developing, it's growing, and then it really long into the mid palate where the mid palate should be. Then it starts turning and really changing into another whiskey onto the back end. All right. That right there makes me think of a specific distillery that tends to do that a lot. But let me see if I can get all these notes for you. Oof. Brown sugar, little chocolate up front as well. Feels a little more milk driven early. Wow, you get the raspberry. That's that raspberry covered chocolate. That's why it's so dominant on the nose. It actually shows up early. You get the little spritz of the lemon oil, a little bit of orange oil in there with it. You get a ton of those kind of baking spices. There is a little bit of nutmeg, so you can almost call it Christmas spices that kind of show up on the mid palate, but they don't get overwhelming. They don't never get hot. It just really kind of broods up on the mid palate, kind of increasing that kind of raspberry, and those brandied cherries that I picked up on the nose are kind of developed into the palate as you start heading into the mid palate. Now, the problem where I run into is right when I'm starting to focus on all these notes and I'm trying to pick them all off, it's already transitioning. It's already starting to turn right as you hit that mid palate. And then you start getting a whole another load of notes. So we're going to have to do a little more research here. Let's see. But medium high viscosity, really nice. This bottle's been open for about a month. Again, all those up front. There is a little bit of like there's a little bit of a sweet date characteristic in there as well. Almost how they, you know, how they can get real sticky. It's almost heading towards a molasses characteristic, but that's all it is. Just dates going in with those berries. As you hit that mid palate and you get all those kind of Christmas spices showing up, it really takes a turn. It starts getting into the peat is what's turning. It starts almost getting into like a cigar humidor, cigar ash type characteristic. But there's enough chocolate still driving, still developing. It actually turns into a dark chocolate as it kind of started kind of milky. Gets dark chocolate, toffee. Then you get this real kind of like bookish library type. You know how those kind of smell? Well, you kind of get that on the palate as it's turning with the cigar ash. The fruits still linger through the whole thing. I'm still, right now, I can still get the brandied cherries, that chocolate-covered raspberry, that little bit of those citrus oils are still going. That biscotti, that kind of almond characteristic, that's in there as well. Now, the one thing that I need to search for that I didn't really pick up when I was going straight through is that real unique grain characteristic, because yes, it is big and malty. It's got that covered. But on the nose, I was almost picking up like a granola or a millet grain. And I can't pick it up because on the palate, I think right when that's about to show up is when it really starts turning on the peat and twisting and going into that darker characteristic. It gets, again, library bookish, dark chocolate, roasted walnuts and almonds on the back end, rich, heavy, dense oak resin on the back end. Not tannic though, it's just really heavy oak, almost mahogany. That's how dark this characteristic is. Overall, man, I love this whiskey. The 22 was no joke either. That came out last year. I'm not sure if the 22s are still around in Costco's. They might be. But wow. Yeah, what a buy here. $85, 23-year-old Speyside. Oh, by the way, my guess at a distillery, it's a long shot, but Milton Duff. Milton Duff tends to have a transition towards the back end that really takes a twist towards those kind of bookish, almost, sometimes they can get kind of damp and soily, but the peat really tends to change and they really drive dark on the back end a lot of times. That's why I kind of feel like that's what that could be. But again, they're not going to tell us. I don't think they're allowed to tell us. But anyway, if you see it out there, feel free to pick it up. Yeah, now I definitely want to compare it to 22. So if you want to see that add on the back end, that's going to be on my Patreon video, patreon.com/LiquorHound. You can join us over there. Check out that library. Thank y'all for joining me as always. Keep leaving all those great comments. Greatly appreciate that. I'll get back to them just as soon as I can. Everyone have a great evening and cheers.